Still had a football game, though, man. And Clemson's catching a lot of flack from some people for holding that game the other night. I still think it was the right thing to do. I talked to a lot of people. There were no resources pulled from other places, despite some of the narratives being put out there. And everybody I've talked to, man, they were glad to have something to get away to for a few hours to take their mind off what they're going through. And I was kind of expecting the stadium to maybe be 2/3 full at most, and it was sold out. And, by the time that thing's over with, there was 80,000 people in there. I mean, so people in that area were glad to have that game, stay scheduled as it originally was. And despite some of the backlash, you will not convince me it was not the right thing to do.
So Clemson takes care of Stanford in the first meeting of Stanford, and Clemson is ACC colleagues, and it looked to be pretty comfortable. Stanford somewhat stayed within distance for a while, but a 40-14 final. I didn't see anything but a few highlights, so give us a look at how Clemson performed on Saturday.
Clemson's still without Peter Wood, so they've got some inexperienced guys playing at defensive end right now. And those guys, especially in the first half, they had some problems getting the edge set. They were getting sucked in and covered up. It was leaving some things open on the outside. And Stanford had a lot of success running the ball. They were able to move the ball on the ground, particularly well. I mean, pretty well against that Clemson defense in the first half. They were basically moving it up down the field. They just couldn't quit turning it over. They'd get down and they had to have scoring opportunities, and the quarterback would throw an interception down there deep in Clemson territory. They ended up turning it over. They had, I think, 3 or either 4 turnovers. I can't remember off the top of my head. And then they turned it over on downs 3 more times. They went for it on 4th down on their very first offensive possession, a 4th and 1, and Clemson stuffed them, and they ended up stuffing them again on 4th down 2 more times. But that was something Clemson was looking for coming in, some of the players said, because they had gone for it on 4th down 10 times over the first 3 games. But we also heard them say, Clemson, and Dabo Sweeney said it too, that Stanford did some things on offense in the first half that they hadn't seen on film, that they were not expecting. And I think it was a lot of that misdirection stuff they were doing. Kind of more options. It was some of it was more option style stuff, a lot of QB run, but Clemson had some issues stopping the run in the first half. They got it cleaned up after halftime. They kind of shut it down in the third quarter, but it was good. The last 2 games against North Carolina State, App State, everything's gone right for Clemson. Everything. It was good to see some things not go right and them have to face a little adversity and see how they'd respond to it. Because even Klubnik was off a little bit. He underthrew some deep balls. He had Wesco wide open on 1 touchdown. Underthrew it. It'd have been a walk-in touchdown had he, hit him in stride. He underthrows it. Wesco still makes the catch, but it's not a touchdown. But he underthrew more than one. It was not. He was not as accurate with the football as he had been in the past 2 games. So it was good to see them face a little adversity and see how they respond. And they really started to pull away in the second half. They played better in the second half. Klubnik, again, using his legs to make some plays. 5 total touchdowns, if I'm remembering right. I think 2 of them came on the ground, if I'm remembering that right. But he had a big touchdown run to start the score, and a couple big, he made some plays, man. He's really finally starting to settle in on this offense.
So this is expected to be one of the games of the year in the ACC, and Florida State has just been awful. They are the disappointment of college football. So they go to SMU and just laid down and got just drubbed by a pretty marginal football team by 4 touchdowns. So they have their problems. So from a talent standpoint, Clemson's a better team, but not nearly is the gap as wide as just how the 2 teams are playing. Clemson's obviously playing for a championship. They look to be the main challenger to, if people are just evaluating play, Miami looks the part right now, although against Virginia Tech, they got outplayed for much of that game. So it looks like between Clemson, Miami, and Louisville, that there's going to be quite a fight for the ACC between those 3. So Clemson, Florida State, this isn't necessarily setting up as a vintage matchup in this series. So Clemson obviously just needs to go down there and not get wrapped up in Florida State's misery and overlook them, and go down there and give it 100% to take care of business.
Absolutely. You hit on it right there. Not overlook them. That as bad as they've been playing, that's a team that's got some talent.
Sure.
Mike Norvell I thought he did a really good job of bringing in some pieces out of the portal, but it just goes to show, it's kind of a crapshoot when you lean on the portal that heavily. You just never know if they're all going to gel together until they get on the field, and they have not gelled well there in Florida State. Also, be interesting to see who they run out there at quarterback. I know DJ left after hurting his hand the other night. Norvell says after the game that he was fixing to make the change anyways. He threw 3 more interceptions against SMU. One of them a pick 6. He has just not looked really good the past couple games. I thought it sounds like he got off to a pretty good start against SMU. I wasn't able to watch it, obviously, and then it just kind of came off the rails for him based on what I've read. But that's it makes for an interesting matchup because it's a team you can't overlook, despite the fact what's happening down there with Florida State. If you overlook them and go down there and you play your D game, there's a chance that those guys will beat you. You let them hang around long enough, right?
Yeah, college football is littered. It's history with these kind of situations where a team just looks dead in the water. They're supposed to be better. They're the most disappointing team you can find. And they may just continue off the rails and sleepwalk through the rest of the season. But something about Clemson's colors, jersey, name may spark something in them to say, hey, let's rally together for one game and give it all we've got. We don't like these guys. We don't like this school. We've never liked them. And just get up for the game and we can make a statement and it becomes a dogfight. Because otherwise, Florida State's been awful. Like I say, I probably caught 10 or 12 plays out of that game against SMU. And SMU is not, they're an average football team. We're talking like the 50th best team in the country, something like that. And Florida State they can't stop the running game. The quarterback for SMU just does whatever he wants. Brashard Smith, who was a Miami transfer, just has a field day against him. Had 100 yards sometime in the third quarter. I don't know what he finished with. The game that Florida State won against Cal, if the Cal field goal kicker doesn't miss 2 field goals in the fourth quarter, they lose that game. And if he makes one of the field goals, then Cal probably wins the game on their last drive, but they had to score a touchdown. They got into the red zone, but they had to score a touchdown, so they lost the game on downs, but they would have been able to kick the game-winning field goal there. So they had 3 bullets they dodged in their win against Cal. Otherwise, again, they would be an 0-5 football team. It's just and what makes this, obviously, this narrative interesting, Jason, is that Dabo is the anti-Mike Norvell when it comes to the approach to the transfer portal. So if we were having this conversation 3 or 4 months ago, well, Mike Norvell's done everything right in the transfer portal, and the team he assembled last year, everywhere you looked, their star players were all transfers, and Dabo's doing it the exact opposite way. But for this particular year, and Dabo may prove to be the guy that's right overall, if you take that approach and you miss in the transfer portal, then boom, here's the result.
Absolutely. That's why I say, I think the portal's a great tool to use when you got a gap to fill or a hole to fill. But I'm not a big believer in kind of what Mike Norvell's done and just where he just leans on it so heavily to build a roster year after year. And I don't, I can see, where he might have to do that if the high school recruiting isn't where it needs to be and you're not developing at a quick enough pace. But again, when you lean on it that heavily year after year after year, you just don't ever know what you're going to get from one year to the other. But with this Florida State team, once Jordan Travis went down last year, on that offense was not very good. Maybe there were some signs of what was to come this year. I know that defense was still really good. I'm just really talking about the offense, but and I don't know what they've got behind DJ. We've seen Brock Glenn some. He was not very good the other night against SMU. They've got that freshman that I know at least one service had rated as a 5-star, Nobody knows if he's ready or not. It's going to be interesting to see what Norvell does and if he runs DJ back out there this weekend when Clemson comes to town, especially after he said publicly the other night he was already fixing to pull DJ anyway, even if he didn't get hurt. So that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow. But, yeah, it's going to be, one drastic portal philosophy on one side and one drastic portal philosophy on the other side, and they're going to clash on Saturday. We'll see which one comes out on top this weekend.
Folks, that's a lesson. Things can change in college football. They can just change. So we may think and overreact in one direction, and then we find out a few months later, well, and it's the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle, usually. And when you mentioned DJ and the quarterback situation there at Florida State, if there's one thing that's worse than your team losing week after week and looking just apathetic and dead in the water, what's even worse than that is when that's your football team and they're playing last year eligibility players. They're playing seniors. You got to see, it'd be one thing if they're just, we're going to go for broke. This is the future at quarterback. We're going to play him, and you lose week to week, but you're still excited about the progress and getting better. And maybe you win a game or two late in the season that shows you some promise. But when you're trotting out DJ and he's out the door, that is not a good position to be in.
Yeah, it is amazing to watch what's happened down there this year. I don't know. I mean, anybody that says they were expecting Florida State to be this good, this bad, they lying. Nobody was expecting this. So many people talking about how that was going to be, one of the best defensive lines in the country. Some people called it the best defensive line in the country back in the offseason.
Yeah, that I didn't agree with, but
and Norvell's the quarterback whisperer, and he's all of a sudden going to fix all that ails DJ. And I never was buying into it. I always thought DJ kind of is what he is now. To me, he looked rather the same at Oregon State as he did at Clemson. I was not buying the Florida State hype this year. Although, to be fair, I wasn't buying it last year either, and I was wrong. I was wrong about that. But it's definitely intriguing what's happened down there this year.
All right, Jason. Anything else on the Clemson front? Any recruiting news or anything like that?
No, nothing new on the recruiting front right now. They handed out a couple new offers since I talked to you last. They offered one new defensive lineman. He was in town yesterday. Sounds like he's getting close to making a decision. We'll see which way it goes. I forget what his name was. I can't pronounce his first name anyways.
Jason Priester's here. We can pronounce Jason's name. He's been coming on here for a long, long time. So we always appreciate Jason. Check out his work at the Clemson Insider. So if you're looking up that online, just Google the Clemson Insider. Is it theclemsoninsider.com?
That's it. Got it this time.
Clemsoninsider.com. There you see the X handle, Clemson Insider. And Jason, you can just follow him right there as well, JP_Priester. All right, Jason, enjoy the game, and we will catch up soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Mark.